In this video, I'll show you how to make a real gluten-free sourdough starter from scratch, fully vegan, corn-free, super easy, no measuring and no discard. I'll share my best tried and tested tips and tricks with you, so make sure to watch until the end so you don't miss anything. For this very first step, you only need two things: water and gluten-free flour. I get the best results with simple whole grain brown rice flour, so that's what I'm using here. Avoid using any gluten-free baking mixes because the added starches and gums can really weaken your starter. If you don't have brown rice flour, other gluten-free flours can also work. For example, buckwheat, millet or gluten-free oat flour. Whatever you choose, make sure it's the whole grain version. I prepare my sourdough starter completely by feel. I just mix a small amount of flour, about 1 or 2 tablespoons, with roughly a shot glass of water. I only pay attention to the texture. If it's still too runny, I simply add more flour. If it's too thick, I add a bit more water. Take a look at the texture of my mixture so you can see what it should roughly look like. Why whole grain rice flour works better than white flour. Whole grain rice flour keeps the bran and germ, which are rich in minerals, enzymes, vitamins and proteins. These nutrients help the natural yeast and bacteria grow steadily and produce bubbles reliably. White flour mainly consists of starch, which doesn't support fermentation as well. So, the first step is done. Now, it's really important that you cover the sourdough starter cleanly. I use a fresh paper towel from the kitchen drawer for this and place a plate or something similar on top. But the lid must never be airtight sealed. I then simply place the sourdough starter in a fairly warm spot and leave it alone until the first feeding. After 12 hours, here's how our sourdough starter looks so far. You can already see those bubbles forming and it's grown a bit bigger too. It might take longer though, that really depends on the temperature. If nothing's happening after 12 to 24 hours, just move it to a warmer spot. The official ideal range is between 20 to 26 degrees Celsius, but I personally aim for around 25 degrees for best results. Now the routine kicks in. It repeats about every 12 hours from this point. Feeding is super straightforward. We just add a bit of flour and some water. Mix it all up, cover it again and pop it back in that warm spot. Make sure everything you use is really clean. Any small contamination can make your gluten-free sourdough starter go bad much faster. Before you begin, wash all your jars, bowls, spoons and spatulas thoroughly, then rinse them again with boiling water so they are as clean as possible. Let them air dry on a freshly washed kitchen towel or use a clean, dry one to gently dry them. Try to avoid old or damp towels and make sure there are no food crumbs or grease around your tools or inside the jar. Yes, this extra step takes a few minutes, but it really helps to protect your starter from mold and unwanted bacteria. While I'm feeding our sourdough starter for the second time, let me quickly explain why I prefer whole grain rice flour here. It's packed with natural minerals, enzymes and nutrients from the bran and germ that really feed the wild yeasts and bacteria. Way better than white flour, which is mostly empty starch. This helps your gluten-free starter activate faster, stay stable and develop that perfect sour flavor without failing. Now we're feeding it for the third time. I'm already excited before each feeding to see how the sourdough starter has changed. I pay attention to the volume and the formation of bubbles. You can observe this best if you use a glass bowl, because then you can clearly see from the side what's happening inside the sourdough starter. From now on, every feeding works exactly the same. Always add flour and water Stir to a butter-like consistency by feel, cover it well and keep it in a warm place. Here I added a bit too much water, so I'm going to add some more flour to the bowl right away. Here's a little trick for you. If your sourdough starter is too runny, the newly forming air bubbles can rise to the surface too quickly and escape. Then you might wonder why there are hardly any bubbles or why they stay very tiny. As soon as you make the starter a bit thicker, meaning more flour and less water, the bubbles are held much better in the firmer dough and they also become noticeably larger. If you ask me, I'd recommend making your starter rather a bit too firm than too runny. As you can see here, after another 12 hours, the sourdough has risen up top and even touched the paper, which is why it got so wet. Look how nicely you can see the bubbles. When the sourdough grows this beautifully, it's really fun to watch. Now it's time to switch to a larger container. Otherwise, everything continues as usual. I'm showing you this step on purpose in one continuous take without cutting the video, so you can really see what the dough looks like and how it feels. You might almost think it's getting too dry, but it's actually just right. This way the bubbles are held really well inside the dough. Now the sourdough is in a larger container and we cover it cleanly again. I'm using a rubber band and kitchen paper here, but you can just as easily use a small plate or place the lid loosely on top. The key thing is that the glass isn't sealed airtight. If you use a lid, don't screw it on normally, just lay it loosely on top. That's really important. To track how the volume develops until the next feeding, I mark the glass with a pen. I always find it fun to watch how the sourdough grows hour by hour in the glass. You could also stretch a rubber band around the glass at the marking line. But neither is strictly necessary, I just do it to see how much the sourdough expands. So, now it's time for the next feeding again, just like before. In the tall glass, I find it easier to stir in the water first and then add the flour. But for the result, it doesn't matter what order you do it in. I just find stirring easier this way. While I keep stirring and mixing here, let me explain a few more things you should know. Once you've cultivated your own sourdough starter, you can't keep using and feeding it indefinitely, so it never runs out. Just keep this in mind. When your sourdough starter is mature enough to use for baking, seal the jar airtight and store it in the fridge. Feed the entire jar once a week, just like you've seen so far. Let it sit in a warm spot until bubbles form again and the volume increases noticeably. Then seal it airtight again and put it back in the fridge. By the way, you don't need to be super precise with the timing between feedings. Roughly 12 hours apart is fine. And if it's 2 or 3 hours earlier or later, nothing bad happens. Here I misjudged the water again, so I'm adding more flour now. Maybe you've noticed that I'm not discarding any sourdough in between, but continuing to work with the full amount. I bake so often that the sourdough always gets used up quickly in baking, so I just need a larger glass every time. Over time, the sourdough starter will start to develop a sour smell, that classic sign of fermentation kicking in. I haven't mentioned it yet in the video, but this actually happens pretty quickly as the wild yeasts and bacteria get active. When transferring the sourdough, you might have noticed that the top layer had a firmer consistency than the bottom layer. Sometimes different layers with varying consistencies form. That's all completely normal. I'll now show you my final feeding and explain what signs to look for to decide if the sourdough starter is ready. How many days you need to feed the sourdough starter until it's mature enough depends on the exact temperature. Sometimes it works after just 3 to 4 days, but it can also take longer. In summer, it usually goes faster than in winter because it's warmer. When your sourdough starter clearly smells tangy and sour and noticeably increases in volume regularly after feeding, it's ready for your first bake. But it doesn't have to fully double, just get clearly bigger. Here I'll show you how I prepare my sourdough starter when I'm baking my gluten-free bread. I take the starter straight cold from the fridge and add water and flour again. Different amounts depending on the recipe. It works just like the feeding I've shown you so far. I'll link some of my gluten-free and vegan bread recipes in the info box and at the end. When your sourdough starter is mature enough to use for baking, seal the jar airtight and store it in the fridge. Feed the entire jar once a week, just like you've seen so far. Let it sit in a warm spot until bubbles form again and the volume increases noticeably. Then seal it airtight again and put it back in the fridge. This is what your sourdough looks like after about 6 hours. I often just leave it out longer, usually overnight in the kitchen, and only start making the bread in the next morning. To find the right bread recipe for you, feel free to check out my channel. If you leave a little heart in the comments or give this video a like, that would make me really happy. All of my recipes are gluten-free, corn-free, vegan and soy-free. Enjoy watching the rest of the videos and I can't wait to see you there.